Okay, guys, sorry about that. We had to refresh. I guess you'll get back to me in a second. When a few of you, I can see there's no one there yet. Hello. Yeah, I got this new computer, and it's the new M1 chip, Apple. It's much cooler. The battery life is much longer. Hello. Sorry about that. Had to refresh, but it still has problems.
Yeah.
With streaming and stuff.
stuff.
Yeah. Hey, Fred. Sorry about that. I had to refresh because it froze up. But anyway, not too much of a drama. I think everyone will come back. Us, Mac. Sorry about that. Look, let me introduce you my good buddy. Dan Higgins is one of my instructors. He's been in the martial arts his whole life. Hey, Chrissy, good to see you. Raj, Kumar, Namaste, all the way from Nepal. Rochelle, thanks. Good for that. Brandon. Look, Dan, I've known Dan for many years. Probably known of him longer than I knew him. Dan was, he's a BJJ black belt, but he's also a top level mixed martial arts coach and wrestler. But his background is actually traditional karate. He, in his youth, he was Shotokan. He went and did his hard yards over at the Shotokan Honbu in Tokyo under Masao Tagawa Sensei, who is still currently the head coach of the Shotokan team, the Japan team. So anyway, it's a real pleasure, and Dan and I get together and grapple. Well, grappling's a little bit loose. We get together and I just struggle, and he just spanks me. And I'm sure he's in touch with my wife, she tells him I didn't do the dishes, and so he sorts me out. But anyway, it's a real honor. We've just been training for a little bit, and I'm really happy. I know that we're going to do Kata. We might do Kata in the second half, but Dan is here, and it's a real incredible. It's a really incredible opportunity for us, but also a real honor for me to have Dan along.
Thank you.
So we're going to go through. Let me just say hello to everybody. Brandon, Paul Knip, aus Deutschland. Guten Tag, my friend. Torbjörn, Vin from India. Good on you, man. Mike, us. See Mike Clark, you know the book?
Yeah.
Mike's written quite a few fantastic books on open arm karate.
He's go-to guy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shingi Tai, Hojo Undo, those ones. So that's Mike. He's always an honor to have you here, Mike. New Zealand suicide. That's we call him what does he call himself? Tigray Aztec. You know the Mexican wrestling master. Yeah. But anyway, he's fantastic. Tigray. Mac from UK. Gazza's all the way from down the hill. You coming to training tonight, Gary? I think tonight you guys are dropping in. And Brad Hansen there, good friend of mine, primary proofreader of the book, nice. And a former Kyokushin fighter who was a team member with Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, good to see you guys. Look, today I thought, I know that, I keep promising Mike Clark you're going to do Kata, and I promise we'll try to do some. But it's a really wonderful opportunity to have Dan here because Dan's one of Australia's, if not the world's, premier MMA coaches, and he's been working with me on my grappling. I use the word working with me very euphemistically. In fact, I just get spanked. But he's a really good coach, and he's been involved with some top fighters over the years. But the thing I really love about, and also if you've ever heard of Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, well, Dan was his bodyguard for about 15 years, worked with him all the way to the very end. But the thing I really love about Dan is, one, the problem with MMA, as you know, you only got to watch guys like that Irish guy. What's his name?
Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. You watch guys like Conor McGregor, and they got real attitude problems. Probably they're confused whether they're meant to be sportsmen or martial artists. But
Indeed.
Yeah, sorry?
Indeed.
Yeah. But what I love about Dan is because he's got his roots in traditional martial arts, he has that really solid sense of the martial tradition and the humility and all that. And he's just a monster on the mat. So today he's, we've been training since about 1:15. But rather than go straight home, Dan's. I've asked Dan if he's willing to stay, and he's offered to stay and run us through some stuff. So we always talk about the 5 ranges. We go from the punch range, from the kick range to punch range. We come in for the headbutt elbow range. Then we work the inside grapple range, and then from there the takedowns to the ground. Well, that's the area of expertise that Dan is really good at. That inside range and how to really make it work under pressure against a non-compliant opponent. And as you know, I'm old and grey. My eyes are dim. I've got to put my glasses on just to read messages. Conor McGregor was put to sleep in his last fight. Precisely his insolent attitude. There you go. Hey, Gare, nice to see you. But Dan can make it work against a non-compliant. I can make it work against a 12-year-old student with a white belt on, but Dan can make it work under pressure. So he's just going to show us one or two things today.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it up to Dan.
Okay. Thanks for having me, everybody. This is a new experience for me. So I thought I'd show the fusion or the transition at distance between striking and getting in safely and getting a hold of somebody, which can be quite problematic. And I'll lead with this thought first, that in terms of total fighting or total martial arts skills, a practitioner who has a solid background in striking with decent takedowns will be much more effective in a situation than someone who's a high-level grappler who has no striking skills, mainly because the setups and the range are different. A lot of the setups that you see in wrestling and judo, obviously there's no striking in those sports, so the range is different and the skill sets are completely different. So as a particularly pertinent, because I take it for granted, I'm with a lot of Kyokushin fans and students. George St. Pierre is probably the best example of that in terms of mixed martial arts, that he wasn't a great, highly credentialed Olympic wrestler, and he wasn't a great Kyokushin guy, but he was very good at both, and the fusion between his Kyokushin and his boxing and his takedowns made him the best takedown exponent in the game. So I thought I'd go through a little bit of that just quickly, some basic entries and some concepts around striking between punching, kicking, and getting a hold of someone safely without getting injured.
And I might add that Dan had no idea I was going to put it on him, so he's doing this all off the top of his head, so nothing prepared. So anyway, I'll leave it up to Dan.
Cool. Where do I stand up here?
Yes, sir. We've both been sitting in Saiha, so we'll get our legs working first. So
Okay.
there we go, about this range, I think is good. Yep.
So one of the big problems I just mentioned before, if I have rudimentary or non-existent striking, I'll be very hesitant to get close enough to be effective against somebody who's being aggressive or I'm trying to defend myself or get a hold of them. Okay, so if I have decent striking through whatever system or whatever experience I've got, it affords me the opportunity to be closer, okay, and I don't have to rush takedowns. Takedowns, like any other part of martial arts, is large portion of it's about having good timing, right? So I'll talk about the first few things first. The human eye, so Cam can see me change levels, even if he has no skills, which he does. Even an average person, visually they'll see me go from elevated to here, and they'll see that very easy. So I need to hide that. And one of the big common misconceptions with striking is people will do whatever strike they want to do, right? And then they'll pause, and then they'll change levels, and they'll get a hold of somebody. So I thought I'd just talk about that concept, really, that whatever technique I want to do, the last technique that I throw, whether it's a punch or a kick, okay, particularly punches, I'll change levels at the same time, and it takes a step out of the game. Okay, so let's just take a right hand left hook, fairly standard, into a double leg takedown. Okay, so how it's conventionally done, okay, is I'll bang that out, okay, and that just is really designed, if I'm a grappler, is to get Cam's hands elevated so I can get underneath his elbows. So getting stop Not worrying about his waist and his legs, which is what I'm going for, and worried about his head, right? So the conventional approach to it is I'll go 1, 2, and then they'll chamber, and then they'll change levels, which if he's high level, which he is, that'll be enough for him to deal with the punches, recalibrate, and then deal with the shot. And make it very hard for me to take him down, unless I'm physically dominant, bigger, stronger, and all the rest of it, which is not in the true spirit of the martial arts. So I'll just, same thing again, but on the left hook, I'm going to change levels at the same time. It's a little unorthodox, okay, but I've taken that step out. Instead of 1, 2, 3 and go, it's 1, 2, go. Okay? So 1, 2, okay, it's conventional. Now watch. 1, 2. I'm on position. Take it down. Okay? All right, so I just wanted to talk briefly about that first, is the entry. I'll talk about the actual mechanics of the takedown in a second. Okay? But 1, 2. The other thing is people don't penetrate the lead leg close enough to their opposition. Okay? I often think there's an imaginary line between Cam's 2 insteps. Okay? My lead leg must penetrate that line. The common error is people's knees penetrate that line, but in all reality, their foot is far too far away. So they do this type of action. So by the time I get to Cam, I have no penetration, no further drive. No penetration, no further drive. So in actual fact, my lead leg must penetrate here, which comes back to having competent striking. If I'm a terrible striker and I've never done any karate, boxing, anything like that, this is a very frightening proposition for me, especially against someone like this, right? So once again, right hand, and when I throw that left hook, I'm going to get in tight here. Now when I push down, I've got so much power to drive through.
And you see where Dan's foot ended up. So he throws the right, he throws the left, and on the left, his foot reaches that imaginary line between my feet. So that's really important that he bisects that line with his foot. That's what he was, because now when he drives with his knee ends up back here, which means his hips end up back here. Whereas if his foot was back and his knee ended up there, his hips end up there, so there's no drive. So that's what Dan's working on there.
So there's a couple of different versions of a double leg takedown. One of the most common sporting versions is to actually put a penetration step. The knee will actually hit the mat. Not great for self-defense because of the hard ground, but for a matted surface, if it's fine. So as Cam was talking about there, a segue into what he's talking about. If I stay at this range, basically my penetration is the length of my shin between my foot and my knee. So if by the time my knee hits the ground, I've hardly touched him, I've got no more penetration, and he's going to do a lot of damage from that position. Okay. So once again, after I've thrown my punching combination, this lead leg penetrates that imaginary line, and even if I take a knee now, that's giving me a lot of space to get Cam off balance, if that makes sense.
Okay, so that's a really important point, which Dan does really well. And I see a lot of guys understand the idea of a double leg, but have never done it against a non-compliant opponent. So the knee hits the ground too early, they get no penetration.
So in terms of the double leg, so that's just one variation. Okay. Actually, before I talk about the finish of the double leg, I'll talk about head orientation. Okay. I don't want to have to move my head around too much. When I decide I'm going to go, I'm going to go. Now, obviously, the higher level striker I am, the higher level martial artist I am, the rules get blurred. Okay, so I can have my head in any position. But starting out, if you finish with your lead hand, your head should always finish on the near hip. Okay?
Okay, so you have to understand what he's saying, what Dan's saying there. Once again, if
I finish with the lead hand, any type, so rip, jab, hook, uppercut, my head will naturally orientate to that side, ever so slightly, and it will be a straight shot to that hip. Whereas if I finish over here with the rear hand, then I'm adding an extra step to get across to here, which is dangerous.
And is it fair to say, Dan, that what I'm taking away from that is the front hand has such a short distance to travel compared to the back?
Correct.
and the head has such a short distance to travel to the front of the body than it does to the back.
Correct.
So if I go here, it's a longer strike, which adds percentages, and it's a longer journey, which adds percentages. So the technique takes 1/10, 2/10, 3/10 of a second longer. Is that a fair call?
Yes, and one of the fundamental differences between sports grappling, where he's not striking me, I don't have to worry about knees, elbows, punches, is that I can shoot my head either side for a double leg or a single leg takedown. But generally speaking, unless the skill disparity is so much I can do whatever I want, if we're even remotely the same skill level, I like my head to the nearest port of call, which is his lead hip. Okay. Going this side, there's uppercuts, knees, and if you know grappling, there's all sorts of strangles. Much harder for him to do that on his lead side. If I shoot hard here, for him to do a lead uppercut or a knee or a choke, almost impossible.
And you can see that because if I want to get a power uppercut,
I'm going this way.
bang.
Bang.
He walks into it, even if I'm dumb and I just go, whoa, and I accidentally slip and knock him out. But if his head's coming this side, boom, I miss altogether. You see that? The head's much, much safer. So that's a really key point, especially for karate people who are bridging the gap to grappling. You have to find the optimal way to do it. And the optimal way is the shortest distance between two lines. Get your head to the front hip, not the back hip.
Cool. So that's, I mean, I could go on and on about different prescribed entries and templates for getting in with kicks and punches and different ranges for single leg takedowns and doubles. But I'll just touch on that. I'll leave it at that in terms of the entry. It's just the standard right hand, left hook. Obviously, if you're southpaw, it's the opposite, right? So right hand, left hook. I get that penetration, remember? Penetrate between his 2 feet, okay? And always head on the near hip, not the far hip, okay? At least initially, okay? This is base, Kihon, base level sort of stuff. Now, the finish for the takedown is important, okay?
You notice I step forward there because
now we'll do it slow. So actually, without a partner as a point of reference, what's critical once you get in there is your structure and base. So those of you who are listening and watching, if you've done any kind of strength training, serious strength training involving your posterior chain, so squatting, deadlifting, kettlebell cleans is another good analogy, or swings. Okay, that structure that you require to do that without injuring yourself is exactly the same structure that you need for double legs and single leg takedowns. What I mean by that is, without a partner as a point of reference, it looks funny without a partner, but backside out, shoulder blades back, and head up. That's my strong structure, okay? If I have my backside in, basically if one of those three things is not happening, I can do all that great work, get in on cam, and he's just going to mush me into the ground, okay, because my structure's not where it needs to be, okay? So, sorry about my phone. That's right. Backside out, shoulder blades back, head up, just like you're squatting, just like you're deadlifting, just like your kettlebell swings and cleans, okay? We're designed to be strong like that. To do to show that, just as a training thing, if I get Cam to bend over at the waist and look at the floor with shitty posture, see how weak he is? He feels quite weak like that. And with no other change except shoulder blades back and head up. Even if he bends over further, see how strong he is there? Well, you can't tell on camera, but he sure can give you that feedback.
yeah, okay. It's much stronger.
So where the head goes, the body will follow. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard that before. If his head's down and he gets a good takedown on me, but like in terms of timing, but his posture and structure's off, I'll just make him look silly. Okay, make him individually look silly. So that's super important, right? So when I get that entry, I might actually do it this way, so it's easier to see on camera. Yep, so same thing. I get that entry, you see that structure now. You see my butt's back, shoulder blades are back, head's up, okay, and I've got both hands on his knees. Not high on his back, not on his butt, because when I hook his knees, if he tries to sprawl there, he's quite weak, even though I'm just standing here, okay? If I go high, I'm weak, and he's going to force me to the ground. So a couple of things there. Good structure, butt out, shoulder blades back, head up, and your hands hook the knee joints. Not the butt, not the upper body, the knee joints. So I'll just do the technique at 20% pace, all the way from the punch to the takedown. Okay? So 1, 2, here. I might try it from a couple of different angles for you.
Watch carefully too the angle change, because we know when we talk about a Zen Kutsu Dachi how it's strong that way, but it's weak that way. So the first thing Dan does is he finds the penetration, positions himself, and then just changes angles. Then I fall over.
That's a great reminder for me too, that at least in grappling centric circles, the 45-degree angle changes are key. So whether we're doing jiu-jitsu on the ground and I'm sitting on my butt trying to sweep Cam off me, get him off me, or I'm doing a judo type wrestling, upper body wrestling thing, a human body is not strong on 45-degree angles. So if Cam takes a solid stance in his fighting stance and I try to move him directly backwards, directly forwards, directly left, or directly right, typically he's very strong. So
Awesomely so.
Awesomely so.
Yeah.
So I call it the big X. So you think about an X through his back, from left shoulder to right hip, from right shoulder to left hip.
Which we know as the arcs of tension, right?
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we call that the arcs of tension.
So just a different play on words. But if I take him in any of those angles, he's weak. Any one of those 4. Okay, so back hip, he's quite weak. Okay, even on that stance, even though you wouldn't think so this way, even that way he's quite weak. Okay, and off that back leg. So even though this double leg takedown, it adheres to those principles. So whether I'm trying to do a foot sweep, or I'm trying to change angles for a punch, or I'm trying to sweep him on the ground, even though they're all very different scenarios, is the same concept, right? So on that level change, angle change again, 1, 2, here. Okay, when I change onto my knee, 45 degrees.
See the leg change?
So I'm going to drive on a 45-degree angle with my head. Those of you who are from countries where they play rugby, think about a rugby tackle. Okay, and I'm going to pull with my left hand, this one here.
And Dan's hand is on my knee. It's not on my thigh. If it was on my thigh, he could push and pull all he wants, but my leg's going to move. But with it on my knee, as you know, he traps my leg.
So actually, just as a teaching point, I'm going to stay here. All I'm going to do is push it. I'm going to not engage this hand. I'm just going to leave it here, nice and loose. I'm going to push with my head and pull on his knee, and I want Cam to try and sprawl. Ready? Go. All right? So those things are critical. Hands on the knees, drive with the head, 45-degree angle change.
So if we take anything away from that, it's what we call the dead zone in karate. Of course, here's the dead zone. He's strong, I'm strong. But the 45-degree that Dan is talking about, I'm strong, but he's weak. So that's the main takeaway from this, the way Dan is teaching this double leg is, first of all, that deep penetration step to get the hip in, and secondly, well, the level change, the deep penetration, but especially that angle. You can have a perfect level change, the perfect penetration step, you get the angle wrong, and you end up in a heap on the ground. Okay, so it's really important to highlight what Dan is teaching here with that angle change. It's just solid gold. It makes all your penetration step, your level change can be half baked. You get the angle right, you'll still have a much better chance of pulling it off than if your angle is wrong altogether.
And I find in general terms, you can get away with having poor footwork or a poor understanding of changing angles if you're physically dominant, which is why so many heavyweights just plod forward all the time, because they're the big guys in the dance. But if you're outgunned physically, or someone's bigger and stronger than you, that can't be it in a striking context or a grappling context. In a striking or a grappling context, if you're not changing angles, you won't be able to deal with their physicality. Okay, all you can do is hope that they get tired. And that's on the ground as well. So if you're a smaller person and you're being mushed and dominated on the ground, it generally is all about creating some sort of angle so you can take away an opponent's physical strength.
Beautiful. And if I can segue, not that I'm going to straight away, but if I can segue that into kata and bunkai. If you think about kata, there are always multiple angles, 90 degrees and 45 degrees. So a kata will finish at 45. It'll finish at 45. It'll change angles here like that. So what's happening is the same principle applies in the kata. If you want to make the bunkai work in the kata, the angle change, even though they say we shouldn't get caught up in the embus and the line of the performance, but we do need to heed the angle changes in the kata. And there is no kata which is just one straight line forward like that. Kata always moving off to the side. And if you work on the idea of a kata not being so much fighting a guy here, guy there, but fighting one person, it's just this constant angle change all the time. It's just like when you fight someone, you're never going to come straight forward. You're changing angles here. And as they change the face, you're changing angles there. It's the same principle. The difference is the range. Okay, so take that and bank it. It's a really important principle that Dan has described. Good. All good? Yes. Okay, let's sit down for a bit. So if you got any questions, make yourself at home there. If you got any questions, posture's everything. You're right, man. You owe Dan dinner after this. I wish I could pay. Good on you, Brad. Yeah, I do owe Dan dinner. In fact, I'll owe him a month's worth of dinners the way we're going, because I'm learning so much training with him. But anyway, that's a 15-minute lesson that you can take, and it will change your understanding of range change, level change, and angle change for the rest of your life. And one of the big things that karate guys don't understand is level change for a start, and that angle change. And what Dan's given you there is solid gold. So
yeah, it was a really, as Xian Cam alluded to before, I come from a Shotokan karate background from 6 years of age until my 20s.
You represented Australia too in Shotokan karate,
and even certainly more so than Kyokushin or Goju or any other classical styles. They're very linear in their approach. So that was a big learning curve for me when I started branching off. Like a lot of guys my age, I saw those UFCs and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all that sort of stuff. So when I started getting into boxing, and which obviously is all about changing angles, and then into MMA and wrestling and judo, and saw that all of those other arts had a strong emphasis on changing angles, it was a big gap in my experience and a big learning curve for sure.
And there's one thing, Dan, that I wanted to ask you about, because earlier on when we were training together, we were just doing some stand-up entry and grappling control principles. And Dan said something which is really valuable, which I really loved, and I'll definitely plagiarize it and put it in my next book. No, I'll mention your name. But
don't have to.
Dan says movement over moves. Is that correct?
Yeah, movement is more important than moves. So what I mean by that is, for a start, it's depth of technical knowledge is more important than breadth, right? And I think in Japanese martial arts, that's not lost. You get judo as opposed to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They'll practice 2 or 3 throws for 20 years, but that is really lost in jiu-jitsu. It's sadly, it's all about technique acquisition, all the new fancy stuff, which is fine. But the way you move your body and how you connect and how you read people, if you master that and the underlying principles, it doesn't matter if you're a meat and potatoes kind of guy like me who uses 4 moves after 22 years, or you're someone who's got 1,000 moves. Equally, they can be effective if your movement is on point. Conversely, if you've got all the moves in the world and you have poor movement, your body doesn't move correctly, then you'll be largely ineffective.
And that's a really important point for martial arts, because many martial arts suffer from the misunderstood paradigm, moves over movement. So because we have a syllabus and You look at any syllabus, virtually any karate syllabus, Kyokushin syllabus. What do you need for 10th, 9th? You'll have a list of moves, but it won't say, okay, to get to this level, we want to see you be able to use the split footwork, get your angle change correct, and know how to move in and out with good footwork. It doesn't say that in the syllabus, but that's what movement is. Movement, you can take the 20 techniques or 30 or sometimes more than that you need for 10th Q and 9th Q, take 3 or 4 of them and apply them to a depth of movement, and you'll have a much more effective fighting ability and strategy than the other way around. So it's really, really valuable. When Dan said that to me before, it just really struck a chord, especially for us who are instructors, because we're always faced with I've learned that kata, what's next? Yeah, I've learned those techniques. When can I do my next grade? And it's like, yeah, you have the moves, but you don't have the movement. And it's really difficult to explain that to some. And sometimes people can train for 20 years. And I always say they actually don't train for 20 years. They train for 1 year, 20 times. They never get any depth because they're working the moves, not the movements. And I think it's really one of the main things that you would have seen too is because of the nature of grappling, it's hands-on. It's all about, you may not know anything, but if you're given free rein to do anything you want, your natural responses will give you a degree of survivability, right? And then you combine that. This is why 6 months of grappling with a degree of movement, a degree of moves, combined with that incredible body of movement, 6 months of grappling can really create havoc for someone who's had 6, 16, 26 years of stand-up with no movement.
Yeah, very true. And I think that tactile awareness that you get from grappling, in a striker's defense, it's much easier to develop in grappling because you're going hands-on right from the first, which is what makes it so daunting at first, to be honest, is that you're getting held down and beaten up and thrown around, and people are forcing their will upon you and all that sort of stuff. But it does those grappling arts, and not just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all those grappling arts do, by nature of the fact you're holding someone all the time, you get a much more acute and stronger awareness of feel and movement than maybe you do in the striking-based styles, I would guess.
And it's intimidating to the ego too, isn't it? You can train karate 25, 30 years and be the king of your world. And you can face someone who's grappled for 3 months and he will spank you like a baby. It is just that real if you have no sense of movement on the ground. Okay, so this is why this concept of movement over moves is a beautiful concept. It's actually a form of Pareto's law, I'd say.
Correct.
It's a form of the 80-20 rule, if you like. 20% of what you do gives you 80% of your movement and effectiveness. Okay, well, that's movement over moves. Okay, you may know 2 moves, and like Dan says, after 65 years of training martial arts, he looks quite young, but he has 4 primary moves,
In fact, I consciously or unconsciously, I haven't made up my mind yet which one it is. The longer I do this, in terms of content, the less I use. And it is about the spaces in between, which again I do think is probably easier to learn in a grappling context because it's slower and you can feel your training partner's intentions as soon as they move. Whereas striking, that's a lot more problematic, I would suggest. But yeah, I certainly drill all the other moves and I teach my students, the full gamut of the techniques. But for my personal game, sometimes I'll focus on one technique for 4 or 5 months in terms of a finishing move or a sweep. But it's the nuances and the way I use my feet or my hands that continue to make an individual progress.
There you go. Yeah. Good points. Yeah. It seems counterproductive. You're focusing on one technique for 6 months, but at the end of that 6 months, when you put it back into your whole game, suddenly it works like nuts. And it's like, I digress a little bit. We talk about Gary O'Neill when he fought in the world tournament and he tried that particular jump spin back kick, and he missed every time. And in fact, in the semi-final against Yamaki told me later that the kick came and he felt Gary's heel brush through his eyebrow. So he said if it penetrated another 2 centimeters, it probably would have knocked him out. So Gary came back, and we spent 12 months, and I'm not even suggesting we did it every single day for hours. Over that 12 months, we had a thematic focus, and that was to change the penetration of his hips in that one technique. So instead of going boom, 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 now he was going boom, boom, and he went back to the All Japan the next year and knocked 3 guys out with a kick and came second in the All Japan. So that principle, move over movement, a movement over moves, but also what Dan is saying is that focus of one principle, one technique over a long period of time is absolute solid gold. Okay, and it's really worth thinking about in terms of karate do. Where does Dan teach? And what's his life like as a bodyguard? There you go. That's Christian. He's my nephew. He was my uchideshi there for a while.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I can answer that. Working for Steve Irwin was probably the best 10 to 15 years of my life. It was closer to 15. Yeah, it was very good. He was a good friend and taught me a lot about life. I haven't had a lot of mentors outside of martial arts, which is maybe sad, I don't know, but he certainly was one. In terms of where I teach, I used to have a massive, well, not massive, but a very successful dojo in Brisbane. But yeah, I teach in my garage now. I've got a home dojo. I've got 2 young children, and I teach. A lot of my instructors come to me, so it is an old man's garage, but the standard is quite high. So yeah, I train 7 days a week out of my dojo.
There you go.
My garage, yeah.
And I can attest to training with Dan. It's a fantastic experience. He does things that most people don't connect. You got the BJJ boys, the wrestling, Dan puts them all together like no one else I know. So anyway, I really appreciate it, Dan. It's a real honor to have.
I've got to go, everyone. Can I just embarrass Saiha and Cameron here just with one story? It's always my story. He is my mentor. He's just recently asked me to help him with his jiu-jitsu, which for some of the things I've done is rates right up there, if not at the top of my my honor list. Nonetheless, my favourite story about Cam is I started martial arts in 1981, so I was 6, and the very first magazine my parents let me buy was Australasian Fighting Arts in 1982, and this man was on the front cover with a beard.
With a beard, but a different colour.
Not so great. Well, goodbye, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome, mate. And
Don't go away. I'll just see Dan off. Give us a couple of secs. What are the gis? What are the? Well, yes, it's Kodo. That's right.
Always.
Yeah, Mike Clark just said is that always?
Yes, that's my. So hi, Mike. How you going? That's my little garage symbol. Part of my thing in the garage is I'm teaching jiu-jitsu and MMA, but as Cam alluded to before, it's lacking drastically in those old school Budo attributes that you would hope that are around that aren't anymore. So I've made a concerted effort to promote that amongst my students. So that's just my little gym logo. I don't have my gi top with me, but it's also on my gi as well. So.
And I can attest to that because of Dan's traditional background I mentioned before, that's a real void in the mixed martial arts and the jiu-jitsu world. And I often say that jiu-jitsu is working really hard. They're doing the best they can to be honored and recognized as a martial art, but they've got a long way to go yet. But there are people like Dan who have the depth of previous experience who can bring that sense of honorability to the BJJ and mixed martial arts world, and that's what we need. Good on you. Us. Thanks, Dan. Give me 1 sec, guys. I'll just see Dan off. And stretch my legs at the same time. Thanks, man. I'll see you Tuesday. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Okay. I'll get my stuff, mate. You get back to your class. Okay. So that was a fantastic opportunity. I know that everything Dan taught, we've worked on, but I also know that Dan teaches it at another level up, so that's good. We've got about 15, 20 minutes left. So, Mike Clark, you'll be happy to know that I'm going to fulfill my promise. See you, Dan. Fulfill my promise and start to work on some kata. And Gary McCausland's there, Gazza. By the way, Gaz, we might make that grading the first weekend of May, not the last weekend of April, because I've had a couple of people say that last weekend they're busy. But Gary McCausland, who's here with us, are you still here, Gazza? Not too sure. But Gary and I did some work recently, and Gaz is training again tonight with us. Yeah, indeed. It's a real pleasure for me whenever Dan comes. And believe me, he just, you know, when you're training with someone with that depth of experience, it doesn't take you a round or two to know. You know from the first touch that everything is right, and especially like he said before, that by that tactile feedback, because it's hands-on, straight away you know whether someone has it, and Dan's got it. So it's a lot of pleasure for me. But good, Gaz. But so Gaz is doing his showdown shortly. Gary McCausland there, and we were working on Saiha recently. So I think we might just continue on a little bit and look at principles of the bunkai in Saiha, because when you understand the bunkai in Saiha, it makes the kata so much more sensible to you. And even if you're not doing Saiha yet, it's a great kata. You should know it. It's a traditional Okinawan Goju kata, which also I brought into Kyokushin. It's called Saifa, I believe, in Uchinadi, the Okinawan language. Is that right? Saifa, I believe, Mike Clark. And in Kyokushin in the old days, sometimes it was also called Saifa, but in Japanese it's Saiha. Same kata. So anyway, the beauty of it is that the angle changes are really nice, and that's why it's a nice kata to move on to. I don't want to get caught up into whether it's done this way or this way in your particular style of Kyokushin. It can be like this, or whether it's like this or like this. As long as you have a fundamentally clear idea about what you're doing and why you're doing it, well, then that is good. Okay, and then once you have that, then you move on from there and start to research the other versions. Hi, Kyle. Good to see you, man. And I haven't ignored you. Kyle, the problem is I think better when I write longhand. So I have pages and pages of stuff that we were discussing, Kyle, and I've just got to transcribe it. So I haven't forgotten. Don't think that I'm ignoring you. So anyway, let's look at a couple of little things. We don't have a lot of time, but there's just one particular area of Saifa which I think is really beautiful and is a perfect example of what we're talking about with the angle change, okay? And that is this concept of we come down, we finish this technique, okay? From the side, and forgive me, I'm going to go shiko, not kibadachi, because of my knees. But you step back and you finish in this technique, then you step forward to here. Okay, so from the front, we step this movement here. Okay, and every little step of the way, I tend to, maybe I overthink it, but I also think it's important, is that even though when we practice, and forgive me, I'm not a McGee, I've been grappling. So we practice the back fist with the flick like this. In the reality, from my experience, whenever I've really had to hit something hard, there is no flick, okay? That's because I haven't, like if you hit the jinchu or even the top of the eye, that flick makes a lot of sense because it adds velocity, which means it adds kinetic energy, which means it cuts better. You flick someone there. But when you're hitting power, well, then you don't get the same flick in your wrist. So when you do the technique here, you're knocking the arm off, boom, you knock the grip off, you come up, and that hand, I don't care if you don't flick it, it stays strong there because you need that integrity through the wrist so you don't hurt yourself. Remember that half the time your conditioning of your hands is all designed to allow the body to withstand the power and pressure that the body and good technique can create. So that's really important to do that. Okay, but where we are is here. There's just one particular area that I really want to look at today because I love this part of it. It's here, boom, like this. You come from here, and then my opponent is in front of me. So I'm stepping in, but I'm also changing angles. It's like I'm doing if my opponent's here, I'm doing an angle change to there before I hit them. I don't want to come into their strong zone and stay in their dead zone. So I come here, bang. And remember they're in front there, so I'm going to step across. Then the kata you stay straight. But if your opponent is there, the reality is I'm here, right? Well, what are these hands doing? The hands work two different, even though we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, this first movement and this one, they appear identical, but the application is very different, okay? And so this is, once you understand the application, the whole kata takes on a new world. So bang, 1. We come here, what I'm doing is moving off, but I want to penetrate down the middle with my snap front kick. So look, this hand, imagine they're in a fighting stance. This hand knocks their front hand away. This hand knocks their bottom hand away. So now I've penetrated in. Their arms are here. I've opened them up. So I'm coming to the inside there. Okay? 1. They've hit. They're shaping up. This hand knocks the top hand away and out. This hand knocks the bottom hand away and out. So I'm coming on the inside. Now that in itself, that doesn't necessarily, there's nothing profound, okay? And then snap kick, and then I put the foot down, and then I'm moving off again. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where, or am I going the wrong way? Bang, bang. Here, 1, 2, 3, and boom. Because I didn't do the kata from the start. Bang, here, there, crack, there, crack. Now, why do I look to the side? Why do I look to the side here? 1,000 variations, 1,000 interpretations. But the point is, the most important thing to realize is I'm moving to the left of him. So I look, he's not in front of me, he's there. In reality, I can turn the angle and throw the kick. The point I'm getting at is these hands separate my opponent. Boom. The next one, even though the movement appears identical, the movement is not separating his hands again because they're already separated. You can't separate what is separated. What you're doing is this one opens, pushes the arms apart. This one now comes to the outside. So I'm moving off to the angle. So we start off 1, 2, 3. I'm going to stay on the spot rather than move forward. Notice my hand comes in front of the elbow. If it comes here and they're grabbing, you don't break the grip strong enough. 1, 2. I come here, step off. Look, I'm looking to that side, but the reality is the bunkai is I'm merely stepping off the angle and opening up and kicking him right in the groin, in the bladder, or in the solar plexus, or even up into the chin. It's up to you. Then the next one, now I'm moving off to the side. So I've gone 1, boom. Now I'm moving off to this side. Again, for reality, I might be at that angle. And that's simulated by looking to the side there, you see. So I know now that I'm on this side of my opponent, and what I've done is I've closed off the arms. 1, the first movement opens his arms. 2, now I close the arms, so now I'm attacking from the outside. I think this is a really lovely point. 1, 2, off to the side. I penetrate and separate his arms apart. Kick. Now, after the kick, he's blocked the kick, let's say. Now, as he throws the punch, I'm going to the outside of that arm. See there? And the arm here, uchiuke, same movement. This movement here is exactly the same as uchiuke garambarai or uchiuke. But the point is, I'm going to the outside now, and I'm snapping the kick underneath the arm that way. I'm just going to read those comments because I feel like I'm rushing a little bit. take my glasses off. So let's look at that. The first few movements there, just in the few minutes we've got left. We start, we step off. Once again, we work on the idea of connection. So someone's grabbing my wrist. I'm going to pull it apart and back. Knock the grip. They've still got the grip. Maybe they've grabbed the shoulder, or even if the grip here is broken by this movement, they grab your wrist. You pull out of it, come to here. They re-grab. You knock it off or knock it up. I find that when you knock it up like that, it doesn't have the same effect as knocking it off like that, but the choice is yours. And if you do that and they still have the grip, you're going to knock the hand off and hit. Same thing again. 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm trying to do it on the spot to stay in the camera. 1, 2. There, that movement is really powerful, because if they've got your arm stepping back into kiba, breaks their balance. You have that connection. And if you want this movement here, you actually use this movement. This movement here, you capture their arm on your arm. So here they grab, I capture it, bang, step back, break their grip, and hit. And you hit them right on the bridge of the nose there. Okay, but they're a tough son of a gun. So what I do now is I come forward, separate their arms. Separate their arms, snap kick. Oh, this time they throw that punch, I'm going to knock it to the side, and now I'm coming to the outside. So this one separates, this one closes. And now I'm coming to the outside and snap again, grab, 2, 3, take the head, pull the head down and hit. So 1, 2, 3, if they've got long hair, grab the hair, swing it around, and the right fist is closed because the left hand has the head in the hand, and you hit them right on the jawline there at that angle. There like that. And that's enough to dislocate the jaw. Okay? Again, 1, 2, 3. This time the right hand is holding the head. There. Okay? Up. 2, 3. Again, I'm taking that, I'm spinning around. The hand comes down on top of the head. We want to think in terms of working a single opponent. So I'm here. I've done it 3 times. He's still a bit of a tough gun. So I'm going to separate, kick him in the groin. He's still pretty tough. Separate, kick him in the groin. He still survived. But that kick in the groin or kick has brought his head forward. I'm going to grab the head, pull it around, and hit there like that. Okay, and in the kata, we turn around like this. It may well be that you take the head and pull, and then you spin him around like that, and again you take the head and hit. That, we're out of time today, but I just wanted to look at very briefly that combination of here and kick, and then here and kick. We go here, we look to the side because we're moving to that side of the opponent. Well, there you go. And if you say that, Mike, it's bound to be right, I'm sure. That's a good, that's definitely a good application, the stomp down. I tend to use the stomp. Stomping down on the foot is great. You even see it in UFC, where guys will get them against the fence and start to stomp down on the foot. And it's very aggravating. But I tend to also use it for weight, because if I want to take my weight here, I stomp down. It's a little bit like the Pinan 3 movement. You go here and stomp. Well, what are you doing? It's like I'm coming here, I kick, and I take their head and stomp. Now, if I just kicked and stepped through, well, I'm going to have trouble breaking that balance with the head. But if I kick and stomp, see, my body weight follows the stomp. Well, it's the same here. I go here, and my body weight stomps down. So the stomp is you sweep them, and the stomp coming down adds impact to the weight. You're using gravity as your friend to finish that tetsui there like that. So the whole idea, the initial thing that I wanted to work on is after this movement, and notice when I do this movement here, look, I pretend they've still got my arm. I'm going to knock that hand off. So it's no good at going here around this area because you haven't affected their grip. Okay. A twirl is a hurl. That's exactly right. Boom. See that? You knock the hand here, there. And then the guy's a tough son of a gun. You know, a kata is essentially a series of techniques against a really tough guy. If the first one works, then the first one works. You know, you don't need the rest. But the reason we'll have 20 moves in a kata is because the first one or the second one didn't work. Okay, so the first movement, and like Mike there says, just my understanding. So Mike says, well, my understanding of this kata is about wrong footing. That's what you're doing. You're changing angles constantly, which is what good fighting is all about. Change that angle all the time. Change that angle. Okay. And then I said, well, yeah, you know, if you say it. And Mike says, just my understanding, not gospel. Well, my understanding of bunkai is I would have to say that even if the old masters had something in mind, it's not gospel because the circumstances that they created it in and the type of opponent they imagined are very different then than they are today. It's just like Gandhi. One of my favorite quotes from Gandhi is that when the poet writes a poem, he's not fully aware of all the possible interpretations of the poem. And this is why you can read a poem. Someone goes, well, the way I interpret that is this. Someone else says, well, I see it as that. It was the same with the kata. This movement is this. Well, no, it's also this. Well, it's actually this. Okay, but they're all right because everyone's circumstances are very different. But the main thing I want you to come away with, a twirl is a hurl. A twirl is a hurl is not Steve Arneill, I have to say. Unless that's what you're talking about. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. More to the point is, I want to have this feeling of if someone is like this separates their hands and comes up the middle, but they come back again. So I close their hands, and like Sensei Mike says, you misfoot them. So I close their hands, and now I'm coming to the outside of them, and I attack there. So this one opens, kicks. This one opens, closes, and kicks. And you think about that. A good way to do it is you get a training partner, stand up, boom, open them up, spread their hands. They're in a fighting stance. This one knocks the hand away. This one knocks the hand away, and you've gone to the inside, and you throw the kick. And then when they react to that, which they will, then you come to the outside now. See this? You're coming to the outside. So now their right arm is coming across there, and then you're kicking at an angle. Well, I think we can't even unify technique within one style, Harry. And what they do, I think, is at least all the correct if I'm wrong, Mike, but all the styles that wanted to compete in kata competition and so on, none of them could agree on their kata being the paradigm. So what they did is they actually basically created a whole new set of kata, which Setai kata, yeah. But that's it. They've created a set of kata which are the standard that they all have to use when they compete in kata. And those Setai kata, I'm guessing, Mike, but I'd say they're probably closer to Shtoryu style than any other. I could be wrong, but that's the impression I get. But what they do is yes, that's true, Mike, Mac. So what they've done is they've created a set of competition kata, Setai kata, which is slightly different to all of them, but they have to use that for competition. So there you go. It just goes to show, there's your answer, Harry. Why can't they unite all the... There's no way. No one wants to, because everyone swears that their way is the right way. So all you can really do is what I tend to do in my dojo is if the kata is like this and like that, well, I'll go, yeah, but there's also this as well. Is that how it works, Mike? Yeah. So that principle is really valuable in, say, a Saiha, I think, because if you understand that principle, then it helps you understand the entire concept of Saiha. 1, 2, I've done that 3 times, and then I step forward and open the arms, kick, and step across and close the arms and kick. Play with that. It's solid gold, and it really makes a big difference. And I'm glad you said that, Mike, because I tend to agree. You look at the people who are often regarded as the best at kata in the world, competition-wise, certainly if they have kata in the Olympics, these are the ones that will win the gold medals. And you slow their technique right down to a quarter or an eighth speed, and you see that their technique is specifically designed to be used for competition kata. It has very little to do with real karate. It's just an exhibition of technique. Yeah, I think it'd be nice, Harry, but the only way you'll see recognition between styles is do what we do here and have a group of like-minded people come together and discuss things openly without any sense of my way, your way, what is right, what is wrong. Okay, because we have people, Kyle Buttress is here from one style, Mike Clark from a different style, Kyokushin people, and then even within Kyokushin, you've got all the influences of Kyokushin are all slightly different. So what we have is we have this wonderful conglomeration of ideas. And then you've got the Brad Hansons of the world. I think he really misses training with all his Kyokushin buddies back in the old days. But Brad and I spent a lot of really good time together over the years training together. So, yes, stay open-minded, but always ask the question, what a block is a lock, is a blow is a throw. And like I've said, where there's a twirl, there's a hurl. Okay, so a block is a lock, is a blow is a throw. It allows you analyze these techniques and apply your own psychology and your own physicality and your own experience to those techniques. And in the dojo, often we'll go, all right, take this technique and break up into groups of 3 and 4 and spend 10 minutes playing with it and see what you come back. And even though every single person in that dojo has been brought up training in the same dojo with the same training partners, every group will have a different interpretation of what that application is. And that's the beauty of the karate. Okay, so I'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed having Dan along as much as I enjoyed grappling with him. I don't really enjoy it. It's a very masochistic enjoyment because he's just so good at what he does. But we'll continue on with some kata next time as well. We'll try and get through Saiha, and then we'll move on to other katas. I know, I think Brad mentioned Seienshin. Okay, even Seienshin, as simple as it is, has many interpretations. Do I do this? Do I do this? Do I do that? Or do I do... Okay, so that's the beauty of it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it very much. Thanks, Mike Clark, Mac, Daniel, Paul, Frederick, Brad, Harry. Good on you all. Tigray, Us. Thank you again, everybody. Listen, enjoy yourself. And I'll see you next week. But in the meantime, if you've got any questions, Us, I hope you enjoyed that. What Dan gave you is solid gold. Keep it real simple. Remember, movement over moves. Depth over width. Thank you very much. Us. Good on you.